Welcome back, everybody. Long hiatus. And
Silenced.
is that on, Joe? Okay. Thank you. So welcome back, everybody. We'll just kind of jump right in. Pretty brief agenda. Start with liaison reports. Then we'll have the schools come in and do the budget presentation. Then we'll approve prior meeting minutes, and then we'll talk about the other budget presentations we have coming up, and then we're out of here by 7:20. And so yes, it was pretty good. There we go. So moved. All right. So I'll instead of just calling up people, we can just kind of anyone that wants to give a liaison report. I'll just that'd be silly. Let's go.
So perfect. Recalc has hired an architect, Bogman, Hendry, and Archetype. I think I said that right. Have provided some conceptual designs for the new senior center. One is at Simmons Way, one on Oakland Road and Pleasant Street. A couple of public meetings to kind of go over what the designs look like and what's included and all the different things. There's another one coming up on this Saturday, 11:30 at the Pleasant Street Center, if anybody wants to go. I think there's food available.
No, there you go. It's a sweetener for the 7 people that are watching online. That'll help.
CPDC, looks like MBTA communities is going to get pushed off to fall town meeting.
Okay.
New proposals. So there's the original proposal that's kind of the mixed residential zone around town hall. There's thought of creating another one that's the same kind of zoning but more spread out around town. One which is the mixed residential with more big buildings allowed, and one that would just be all in the commercial areas. There's also, let's see, last meeting, the Pinevale Ave mixed-use development has been reduced by 25% on the commercial side, from 40 units down to 30, and the commercial footprint reduced by 11%. They're still looking for permission from Mass DOT to do an extra curb cut on Main Street. They're going to redo the parking lot as well, and that meeting has been continued to March 11th if anybody wants to show me.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Go ahead, Joe.
Right. So the select board's been up to a lot of stuff that I'm not going to try to summarize, but there was one item of business last night that's very relevant to us, which is that they've voted to put together a Community Preservation Act Study Committee, which has 5 ex officio members, meaning people from particular committees. Let me see if I can do it off the top of my head. Let's see. There was REC, Historical Commission. Geez, I'm not going to get them all. FinCom is one of a select board. FinCom is one of them.
Okay.
I'm missing one. 2 residents and the director of the Housing Authority would be a non-voting member since they're non-resident.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Not to jump the gun later when we talk future agenda items.
Yep,
That seems like a natural.
Yep, thank you, Joe. Jot that down. Cool. Anything else? No.
I'm about to say that they picked the town manager. That's one thing that I think we all think is good. So there we go.
Is Matt online?
He's not.
Okay.
All right.
We'll congratulate him some other time.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Anybody else? Go ahead, Emily.
SWEC is still meeting, although we thought they were sunsetting, but they had a meeting a couple weeks ago and they spent a very weird amount of time talking about us and our interpretation of pickleball. So they tabled approving their minutes so that they could rewatch our meeting to see how we voted about the pickleball thing.
That actually makes sense. I
Um,
had a couple questions that came to me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why? What are you asking me about? Okay.
So
Perfect.
they
Yep, that
resolved
makes sense.
it. They figured out what they wanted to say. They did that, and then rec. There was Friends of Reading Baseball came with a proposal to improve the batting cages at Simon's Way, and it came to light that some of the money used to fund that came from the town manager's slush fund. And it was petitioned by a private citizen, and the town manager said, yeah, that sounds great, and gave them some money, but didn't inform rec that the project was happening, so it came to the rec committee and the town staff at the same time. So they were asking for some clarification on like if the town manager money gets used for capital improvement or whatever,
Right.
what is the process to go through town staff and the appropriate boards when that happens, so that was kind of interesting.
Emily, is there a proposal coming from the Simmons Way Exploratory Committee? Sometime-
It seemed unclear. I think the answer to that is no. A few members were like, all right, let's make our recommendations, but then a few other members were, concerned with how engaged they've been with the neighbors. And they were hesitant to say, we want to make a recommendation without having a public meeting with the people that are abutting the space. So I think they have something in mind, but I think they want public buy-in before they commit to something.
Recalc also has a potential proposal for.
Right, and there was a lot, yeah, there was a lot of like muddiness around whether it would be used for a senior center or if the Burbank Ice Authority wanted to build another rink or if it could be a pickleball facility, so I think it was, they still have some gray about what can and should go there, but they're still meeting.
Interesting. Thanks, that's a great update. Anybody else? Go ahead, Marian.
Just further to the select board, I guess, it was pretty eventful last night, but I think they did get to the warrant because I had been reviewing the warrant ahead of the meeting. And so that will be coming to us. I think they approved it, but there are two, I guess, non-typical financial articles in addition to the budget article, which is, pertinent what John mentioned about MBTA communities. Article 13 is an amendment that we will see asking for some money to hire consultants to help. Maybe they're gonna formulate some additional ideas for MBTA communities. I have seen that other places like Lexington has hired consultants to help them develop a plan, so I know that they're, in my personal capacity, I've met with Andrew and Mary and they're responsive to what the community's saying. It's not easy, so maybe this will be something that will help them, but they will need some money for that. I don't know how much. And then, I forget if this came in before we had our financial forum, but the select board the town did get a $2.6 million grant for the Haven Street Streetscape project. And I believe a couple of years ago, I think it was spring 2022 town meeting, Fidel had mentioned about that would have been about a $7 million project. So there is Article 14 that will be asking for the rest of the funding,
Yep.
probably to go with that. So that'll be a preview. I'm sure we're all gonna have a night that we'll hear more about those things. So beyond the regular budget, those were just two items that jumped out at me. And then the amazing Parker roof surplus that keeps getting to
The
be
gift that
used,
will-
but yeah, that's.
The gift that we'll
there's
keep
another
on
article
giving.
on that.
And we might hear about that tonight.
You will.
Okay, so I don't know.
Did they actually do the roof?
Whoever budgeted that, they get them to budget
Yeah,
they would
everything
cough up
else,
a
so we
check
have leftover money.
There's actually no roof.
We
Okay.
we just glossed over it.
And that's just, I'll just, this is select board supplement.
Joe?
Just quickly, RMLD, people see this in the March bills, but residential is going up 2.5%. And there's different ranges by classes, but industrial will be like 4.8, so.
Thank you, Joe.
So it's definitely a lot lower than before, which is good, so.
Anybody else? Jeff Mark? Okay, Andrew, okay, so I'll give a quick Killam School Building Committee. I always get the acronym wrong, but we've been actually meeting fairly regularly. Carla keeps us on a tightrope. I'm actually on the communications committee as well, and the communications committee meets every week. So I think this is the last time that we've gotten together. We've also hired a designer, LDA. I should probably have that written down, but they've been super engaged. We've kind of hit the ground running. I've been unbelievably impressed with the thoughtfulness between the OPM and the design team as far as just like starting to execute a plan as far as to kind of go through this. And I know Tom and Derek and Tom will kind of talk a little bit about Killam, kind of as a kind of in part of the presentation tonight. So I don't want to steal any thunder there, but just a heads up, there is a meeting tomorrow. We have kind of a couple different threads that they're kind of following. There's one on communications. There's one kind of for traffic and abutters. This one tomorrow is around sustainability, which is really kind of an interesting topic. And I folks may have heard this or may not have, but as it relates to sustainability, there are some incentives that come from the MSBA around some sustainability and efficiency piece that you can actually get more of a percentage back. So that actually, I think for, and I'll just speak for myself, kind of changes a little bit of the dynamic because, I think we worry a little bit about, doing something and having it, kind of increase the price tag. But if you're also going to get more reimbursement on the back end, now you're, yes, you'll create some efficiencies and you'll pay less in, kind of utility and maintenance, kind of going forward. But if you can lessen some of the burden up front, now that really kind of changes the dynamic as far as what's out there. And I think that would really resonate with when we kind of communicate that out and start talking to the voters. So, really good. Again, as I'll have, kind of from a liaison report, we meet so frequently at this point that I'll have updates throughout the month, and so I'll keep folks updated as we kind of go along. Any questions? Anything else from anybody? All right, that's why we're all here. So we'll move on to the school budget. So again, first, just I want to be able to kind of looking forward to hearing from Derek. Kind of we're setting the bar really high, his first one, so we want it to be kind of a smashing success. But really appreciate all of the kind of back and forth, and again soliciting questions from us ahead of time. Again, super appreciative of kind of that effort to make this a little bit more collaborative on our side. But again, we're not shy about asking questions. So I'll throw it over to you guys.
Great. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. I think it was Jackie tonight will pull up the presentation. I think I've met everyone here, and I think everyone's met Dr. Derek Pinto, our Director of Finance and Operations. I know he came earlier to introduce himself. I'm sure everyone knows Tom Wise, our school committee chair as well. Also joined by Joe Huggins, or if you're not yet, he'll be jumping on shortly, and Sharon Engstrom. Tonight we're going to provide open up with a high-level overview of the FY25 budget, and I think engage in some dialogue around topics that do relate to FY25, but also that we think also span beyond FY25. Yep. Tom will open up a dialogue around or introduce, give some updates around our contract negotiations. As you may know, all 5 of our bargaining units were to expire at the end of the year. Tom will also give an update on our path towards universal full kindergarten for the community. Derek and Sharon will share an update around the Killam School Building project, particularly around where we are with spending in terms of projections versus where we are now. And then also Joe will give an update on capital spending. We'll address the Parker roof, yes, the savings, and sort of what we're thinking about that too. So with all that, Derek's gonna open up, can kick it off.
Thanks so much. Good evening, everybody. Nice to be with you again this evening. It's been a while since I saw you last, so I'm glad to be back. It's a pleasure this evening to present the school committee's recommended budget, and we'll go to the next slide. It's going to be a shared presentation, as Dr. Milchevsky mentioned. He'll be picking up on a couple of slides. So you've received both the presentation and the budget book in your packet already. My intention is just to highlight a few items per slide, and then I have, as you'll see, 7 items on the agenda this evening. So on the next slide, you'll see we received Finance Committee budget guidance in October of 2023, and they voted for an FY25 school department budget guideline of 4% over the FY24 appropriated budget. You'll see the operating funds there, and they've been allocated to, you'll see on the left side, it's FY24, followed by FY25, the dollar change, FY25 over 24, and then the percentage change in the far right column. The operating funds have been allocated to meet the increased costs of all contractual obligations and mandated services and investments aligned to the district's strategic plan. Special education accommodated costs include out-of-district special education placement tuition and transportation costs. And the community priority, thanks to the town of Reading, money's allocated towards reducing the FDK, that's the full day kinder tuition fee. So it's important to note that the town made an adjustment of $151,925. That's in the second column there, FY24, and that's the prior year's community priority. And so that was added to increase the school base so it wouldn't get lost as a one-time increase, and as a result, the percentage increase is slightly greater than 4%. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the budget process and timeline. And so we use the tenets that you see on this slide here, and the budget guidelines that were established by the Finance Committee and our own school committee. We used, of course, the district's mission and vision and statement of equity. And the process, taken to build the budget included aligning budgets with our employment contracts and negotiated bargaining agreements and ones that we were anticipating. Calculated costs were based on historical trends and known service and material rate changes and some other anticipated requirements. We evaluated staffing schedules and student groupings, caseloads based on projected student enrollment, class size, and student need. We redeployed existing resources where possible and used grants and revolving accounts to support changes in baseline operating expenses and fund investment priorities. On the next slide, you'll see the timeline and how it unfolded. So this is almost the culmination of a process that began in July. As you can see in the red columns, you'll see the months, and in the white columns, the series of activities that took place. So July to October, we worked on things like enrollment projections, forecasting, and budget building. In November, there was a collaboration with stakeholders at our place for priorities and any requests that they had. In the December-January timeframe was the building of the budget book, and we had budget meetings, we had presentations and hearings, along with a discussion and vote on consecutive Thursdays in January. And then February, here we are before you tonight for the Finance Committee, and then given that we move forward, it'll go to town in April. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Milczewski now to talk about budget guidance and investment priorities on our next slide.
Great, and after I walk through these pretty briefly, then Dr. Pinto is going to take it back over and walk through the kind of the budget by cost center too. We thought it was important to highlight for FinCom what was some of the guidance that our administration received from the school committee, and also what were some of the priorities that were elevated amongst our administrative teams, our principals and school leaders. Starting with the top, sustain and meet contractual obligations. As I shared, Tom's going to speak a little bit more detail later about where we are with negotiations, but making sure that we could meet all of the, settle, our contracts and also make sure they were sustainable for years to come was the top of our priorities. 2, maintaining our ESSER staffing. As you may know, this is the last year of the ESSER grants. I think you may hear neighboring communities conversation around the ESSER cliff. It was really important to us that we had 3 positions left on the ESSER grant that we were able to roll over in our operating budget, 3 counseling roles, which I'll speak about more in a few minutes. We, over the past couple of years, had been able to build in the rest of those positions from ESSER into our operating budget. Again, number 3, Tom will speak more about our path to universal full-day kindergarten. We feel like we are still on track to our commitment to moving towards universal full-day KA by FY26. And also the 4th one around maintaining and expansion of special education investments. So for those of you who follow the schools closely, you may know we have recently completed program evaluations of all of our substantially separate special education programs. So you'll see continued investment in building out our substantially separate programs to be able to better service students in district, and also continued investments in special education in general in our district to better support student needs. Continued exploration of additional Tier 2 support. We know we have a lot of students who had just additional academic needs, particularly in light of just COVID learning gaps. So continue to find ways that we can remediate and support students throughout K through 12. Structural support for Reading Memorial High School leadership. We know that we've had significant leadership turnover at RMHS in the past decade, probably a little bit beyond that. I think for those of you who are involved in the high school community now, we feel really encouraged by our high school principal, who just was an interim now permanent principal, Mrs. Jessica Callanan. The committee's made it clear in our administrative team that we really need to make sure that we identify any structural barriers that have been there in place for other previous leaders so we can support her and her team to be successful for the years to come. Implementation of recommendations from Secondary Math Pathways Advisory Committee. The school committee, and also we've had a group of parents and educators working together to help address or look at the challenge of, in our district previously, a student's math placement test in sixth grade often dictated sort of where they could possibly end up throughout their trajectory in math. So we spent a lot of time thinking through how can we provide more on-ramps for students throughout their educational experience. So continue to invest in those programs and initiatives that will allow us to provide that flexibility to students. Also, review of middle school literacy curriculum. I know that we have, I've spoken with many of you over the past couple of years about our shift in our K-5 literacy curriculum. Last year, we were really encouraged by the first year of implementation in grades 3 through 5. We were fourth in the state out of 307 districts in elementary literacy growth, which is really encouraging for our first year of implementation. We expect that we're going to continue to see, higher levels of growth and achievement in our students. And also, we recognize that we also need to have a curriculum, materials, and tools, resources in place at the secondary level that align to research around how students learn how to read, science of reading, brain research, et cetera. And then last but not least, continue the expansion of the RMHS Innovation Pathways. Again, I think we spoke about this at length last year, but innovation pathways are just specialized pathways for students who may have interest in a particular area, theme, or topic, and giving them more coursework at RMHS in this area, coursework that also gives them college credits through dual enrollment, and also opportunities to connect with internships or other companies, industries out in the field. So now we'll have next year 5 innovation pathways. This year we had 3 from digital music, computer science, engineering. We'll also have 2 pathways next year in clean energy and healthcare and social assistance. That's interestingly enough we've had got close to $200,000 in grant funding thus far through the state for innovation pathways. There's still a ton of grants that are out there outstanding for us. We could possibly this year collect up to or gain up to $800,000 in grant funding for innovation pathways. So continue to invest in those programs which we think are going to provide new opportunities for students at the high school. So with all of that, those were all things that sort of were identified by both our internal team and by our school committee. I'd like to, in a minute, I'm going to walk through there's only a couple of those that we were able to address explicitly through the operating budget. But I also wanted to note that even the ones that we weren't able to identify, that we're not identifying the operating budget for FY25, we are still continuing to think of ways that we can support or fund those. For example, we are, as you can probably tell by the innovation funding pathways conversation, aggressively pursuing grants in a lot of areas for us to be able to fund many of these different initiatives, for example, secondary literacy and others. So in addition to using our operating budget, continue to look at the state, federal level for grants and opportunities. 2, also continue to look internally, what do we have within our own staffing, in our own resources to be able to maybe reshuffle some things to meet some of these needs. This past year, we felt like we had, in one case, special education caseloads that were relatively low. We thought that if we could condense some caseloads, we might be able to free up a teacher to move into what the program evaluations asked for, which was an inclusion specialist role, which is a educator who will provide direct coaching and support to teachers around inclusive practice. Thus, so far this year, that's been a really effective role in helping us to better service students in district who may have some more complex needs. So that's just an example too of us continuing to look internally of how do we best use our resources, how do we shuffle things around instead of always having to add to our operating budget to meet some of these needs. So with all that, you'll see what's added in the FY25 budget. A couple of things. First, you'll see that we have moved a 0.4 speech and language pathologist position to a full-time position. So that's a 0.6 FTE. We have seen a significant increase in students requiring speech and language services. So adding in this additional FTE will allow us to keep our caseloads at a manageable level for our staff and also better meet student needs. I should also share this was the recommendation of a working group that we have with our union around special education as well. That is a current staff member who's a 0.4, and that staff member will just now move to full-time. The other investment you'll see in pre-K and elementary school is the addition of a 0.5 lead teacher at JE. So a little bit of context, as you likely know, at JE houses our language-based special education program. This program, we feel that if we can continue to invest and build this program up, we can not only better support kids in district, but also kids in front of us, but also keep kids in district. This year, we piloted having a additional teacher in that program. The teacher is 0.5 at JE in the program. It is also 0.5 teaching specialized reading at Killam. We've seen, I think, some really encouraging gains, student gains, from having this additional staff member in the program. Therefore, we felt it was important to maintain this 0.5 in the budget for FY25. I should also note, we are still trying to figure out any possible way that we may be able to keep the staff member full-time. So we're trying, as the budget season moves on, if there's anything else we can do there. We feel that's, again, a role that, in terms of the providing specialized reading support for students, has really made a really strong impact. And then the last bullet, Tom will speak more about in a few minutes, which is around our continued path to full day K, and you'll see there the drop in tuition. Shifting to the secondary level, there's no new adds at the secondary level. These are 3 positions that were on the ESSER grant that we're now sliding into the operating budget. All 3 counseling positions. I think I'm not at length going to speak tonight about just the impact of counselors. I think you've probably heard a lot about that over the years. I will share just one position was at Coolidge Middle School, which equalized support across the 2 middle schools years ago. And the other 2 positions were were both counseling positions at the high school. One was a more of the college and career counseling position. And then the other was for the first time having a counselor who was just directly responsible for providing more social work, intensive social and emotional support to students. So maintaining both of those positions, the budget we thought was, or moving those from ESSER into the operating budget, we thought was critically important. So you see, this was generally for us what we felt was for the most part, a level service budget, with the exceptions of the few things that I just outlined out here above. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Derek. Derek's going to break down just the FY25 budget by cost center, and then Marianne,
You go ahead, yeah, absolutely.
and then we can.
Just a question on the JE lead teacher. You said, you're trying to get it to be full-time and it's half-time, but is this teacher is teaching in this special ed program?
Correct.
So are there IEPs that require a full-time person and you don't have the money to fulfill those IEPs? Am I misunderstanding that?
No, we are able to meet all IEP related services with the current staffing that we have. We feel that if we have additional support or able to lessen, like, for example, lessen like grouping size, or also provide more intensive support to students, then that we're gonna have a better chance of keeping kids in district seeing better literacy growth. But if we keep this model, even without this staff member, we could technically be in compliance. We just don't think that that's necessarily what's gonna move the needle for our kids. So,
Can I just follow
Yeah.
up, just a quick question, and again, this may be unfair, or not an accurate question to be able to ask, but I know the goal is to, kind of invest, kind of in district to kind of, kind of reduce our costs, but able to service more kids, kind of in district. Have there been any kind of metrics or statistics about, so when you, in the opposite, when you have to do something out of district, has there been the inverse, where because we're making these investments and servicing more of our kids in district, that now more kids out of other districts are coming? Is that something that is possible? Does that happen, or?
We do have a few.
yeah, not a lot. I
Not
mean,
yet.
not yet. It is a goal of ours to be able to build up our programs to a level where we feel like we can bring students in from other communities in our substantially separate programs and feel confident that we'll be able to meet their needs as well. I think that we still feel like we, have some work to do bolstering up our programs to maybe get there, but we do have a couple of students, as Tom shared. I'll give an example maybe of like our REACH program. This maybe ties to Marianne's question. LEAD program was we feel like over the years a lot of students with language-based learning disabilities have left Reading Public Schools and have been for one reason or another out of district placements, particularly at Landmark. And we feel like we've heard feedback from families on sort of what were some of the things maybe that they're seeing and that they saw in the program they wished was there that maybe they're seeing in some other at Landmark or other communities. What are some of the things maybe that when we speak to advocates, which we spent some time doing, we speak to our staff, what are some of the things that it would take for us to really bolster up our own program? So our own program would be one that families would feel really confident in, that students are going to be able to have success, and that's why we feel like since we've had so many students in moving to Landmark, we feel like investing in our LEAD program is probably a program that is a great sort of invest to save, and also quite honestly one that we feel like over the years maybe we haven't supported our students as best as we possibly can. So I think that's why this is like sort of our program that we're really investing in. Also, we have we're in the process of going through the special education program review for LEAD. We anticipate having the recommendations within the next 4 to 6 weeks, and that will share sort of openly with the community maybe what are some of the things that are really working in our program, so everyone in the community is aware, and maybe dispel some myths about our program, and also maybe what are some of the things that we need to focus on to bolster it. I will share that there's also, we feel internally now that there's some really good things happening in our LEAD program, and I hope that those are elevated through the program reviews, and we think that that will also help us to market our program. Is there anything else that you want to share on?
You hit it. I mean, I'll hit it a little bit in some of the other stuff, but I think he hit the big points.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, and this may be a layup question for Tom Weiss, but did a lot of this kind of come from just mining our own data to be able to kind of, because I'm thrilled and like I'm so impressed, and thank you all of you for these types of kind of investments, and I think they're kind of exactly what the community deserves, for lack of a better term. But I'm always curious as far as how did we get like why now? Like why not early? Why not earlier? I mean, I'm thrilled that it's now, but was there some inflection point that happened that allowed us to be able to get there?
This one, or do you want?
I mean, I think we can take it together. I think the short answer to that is people, really. I mean, we can mine data all we want, but if you don't have the right people in place, it doesn't matter. So whether that's Tom, but even to a lesser extent, Tom, Jen, Stice, Dr. Stice being there is huge. I tell people this, I've told people this before, but I would have conversations with Dr. Stice and others about reading, and she gets it because she's been there, right? So she understands it implicitly from the beginning to the end. She's gone through it with her daughter. All this stuff is public information, so I'm not letting that out, but that is part of it, is part of the DNA. And Dr. Stice and her DNA, and working through with the teachers, with the coordinators, and the empathy that she shows to the families comes off as well. So that empathy leads to confidence. That confidence and the work with the staff leads to, okay, what do we need to do to improve? Our numbers, there's no mining necessary. There's 10, 12, 14, 15, whatever the numbers are for the number of kids that are out. That's a cold hard fact. It's not a mine necessarily, right? But the process that she has gone through, and then you may remember a couple of years ago, we hired a literacy coach for special education, Renee Lamaro, and the training, that we've gone through from a district perspective. All of our staff are hired on reading in the brain, every single one of them, right? No matter what you're doing, you're hired on reading in the brain and things like that, so that it's kind of intrinsically there, that they understand how important that is. I contrast that to other districts, and I'm not going to toot Reading's horn necessarily, but I will toot our horn. I have families from other districts right around this corner calling us and asking us how we're doing it. And the answer is people, really. Having the right people in place, and Dr. Milczewski, Dr. Stice, that will support that vision and say, this is what we need to do. It would seem like it should be a layup for everybody, frankly, from a money perspective and an empathy perspective for families, but it's not. Most people, and we've heard this from past people, tie it to the law, and the law is this big nasty thing, and it can be, but the implication of how you, or the practice of how you implement the law is a people thing, and we have the right people in place.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask a follow-up, and I don't know who, maybe this is best asked for Derek. When I'm looking at the chart here and the half-time lead teacher that you say it would be nice if you had full-time, I mean, the investment, it's 48,786. Is it accurate to say that that is less than the cost of transporting one student to Landmark?
Yes.
So to me, it seems like a no-brainer if the money were there to benefit a lot of students, because it would save us on I mean,
It's about 80%
transport
of the
to
cost of life.
special ed schools, from what I understand, is a big chunk and is a growing chunk, right?
Not just the transportation, but the whole tuition as well, right? So,
Right,
I mean, keep me
Yeah.
honest, but the
Yeah.
tuition at Landmark is 60 grand, give
Yeah.
or take.
Yes.
So 48,000 is 80% of that tuition on, if you do transportation on top of that, and whether or not the agreement has transportation, it adds to it as well. Now, with that said, the state, with the especially the Student Opportunity Act, does give money back to us as well. So you gotta have to kind of take that off.
yeah,
So it's not a pure 80%. In fact, I would argue it's probably less with the circuit breaker money, right? So if you take the circuit breaker, it's maybe more than, that teacher's probably more than what we pay out of pocket when we get the money back on the circuit breaker. But even so, that becomes now 2 kids or 3 kids, right? That you're
Right,
talking
that's-
about, and then you easily get there from a financial perspective.
okay, that's useful to know, thank you.
Go ahead, Joe.
I guess, Tom, like, beyond special education, are there any areas like based on metrics, like you think you'd double down on if you could? I can see the guidance counselors and but from an operating side, like, you know, based on the data that you're seeing, like reading assistants, I don't know your business, but so.
I see you're nodding. Go ahead, you go first and I'm sure we do. Tom was nodding, so
I mean, we'll see if we agree on this or not, but we've seen an explosion in our multi-language learners. And we're at compliance, technically,
correct.
right? But could we do better? Yes, in a similar type of fashion. And the same type of issues in terms of classroom space and number of teachers and locations. And because of the fact that our multi-language learners are in all the schools, but we have like 2.2 or something like that, staff members allocated, they're moving from school to school to go to work with those students. So that number's only increasing, it's not going down, and we should expect it to continue to increase. So we talk about this next year and we think about it, we're probably gonna be looking at more staff in that space. If we find more savings, we're probably gonna be looking at more staff in that space, even next year, despite the budget that doesn't have an increase in that right now.
And you can't like get grants specifically for that, can you? Is there any type of opportunity there, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would share, there are some, so we did, for example, we did get one, there are some grants out there. There is one grant that we got this year through our nursing department, which allowed us to add a multilingual learner family liaison. And this was someone who's directly responsible for building relationships and maintaining relationships with a lot of our families whose primary language is not English, particularly a lot of our Portuguese-speaking families. And a lot of those families have already shared that now they feel more connected, having someone they feel like is a point person, someone they can go to help them navigate not only the schools, but really the community. We are seeing, and that's in alignment with the largest population that we're seeing increases is our Portuguese-speaking population too. So that was a 1-year grant for that too. So we're seeing a lot of 1-year public health type grants that we have to kind of fit in, but we're not seeing a lot of grants just around like direct support for MLL students. So that's why it's mostly, the past couple of years, we've made significant investments in our operating budget. I was gonna go there also, just the 2 other things you see on there is like high quality curriculum. We'll keep talking about like having high quality curriculums at the foundation of ensuring that all of our students have access to grade level standards. So I think that's a continued focus for us. And I think the work around the innovation pathways, when you say double down, I think we want to double down in 2 ways. Double down by more at the high school, opportunities for students to engage in coursework that aligns to what the sort of the world is, but also what the job market is, college career readiness, and also what their interests are. We need to engage those, but also double down by bringing that down. So we're starting to have conversations at the middle school level to share, how do we get more engineering? How do we have more computer science? How do we have more part of computer science, but coding? How do we have more, so it's just like bringing more of that into the middle schools and even down to the elementary schools are spots where I would double down, sort of especially in the context of education that we're in.
Thanks.
Awesome, thanks.
So Derek's gonna
Okay.
quickly break down by cost center, and then we're gonna open up on the last couple of items that are future related.
That sounds great.
Okay, so here, the purpose of this slide is just to give you some historical context. So you can see that we're separated by 5 cost centers that are on the left. You'll see the dollar changes from FY21 through to FY25 here, and then the percentage change in the far column. Okay, and on the next slide, you're going to see the recommended budget by cost center. So the pie chart on the left provides kind of a visual representation of the expenditures attributed to each cost center, and then so for example, you'll see 58.74% of the FY25 recommended budget is allocated to regular day expenditures. You can see that in the far right column, recommended budget, FY25. The table to the right, so the table that I'm talking about, notes the year-over-year changes. So you can see from 24 to 25, they're basically all under 1%. Regular day expenditures include professional, clerical, and other salaries, contract services, supplies, materials, and other expenses. And in the sections to follow, I'm going to summarize them by cost center. So I'll go to the next slide. And so the next slide, you can see what I'm talking about here, right? You've got the FY24 appropriated budget, followed by the recommended budget, which is now the school committee's recommended budget, the dollar change over FY24 and percentage change. The primary function of this administration cost center includes salaries and expenses for the central office, so administrative assistance along with district-wide data and information management. This currently accounts for 2.44% of the total district budget. So the most significant driver here is salaries. That's the change, right? So we've had a staffing exchange going on where outgoing staff salaries are higher than incoming staff, and so that results in a budget savings for you. There are step increases, so the ascension of staff members in their respective columns in the salary matrix, or maybe they've got degree changes. So maybe they're moving over with increased education credit or degree attainment, and so they move across the rows in the salary matrix. I'll go to the next slide. So in this is the special education, which we spent a little bit of time talking about. So the primary function of this cost center is it encompasses all personnel and non-personnel expenses necessary to deliver special education and related services to the students in our school community. So this is mandated by the IDEA Act, the Individuals with Disability Act, as well as Section 504 of the Americans with Disability Act. So we strive to provide those programs and services that are necessary in a least restrictive environment. This cost center makes up 31.32% of the recommended budget. And so professional salaries, clerical salaries, other salaries have all been adjusted as a result of some successful negotiations. We'll hear a little bit about that later, as well as we've covered some anticipated adjustments. In non-personnel, in the special education budget reflects some shifting of funds. So to increase, we want to support out-of-district transportation costs, and we're earmarking students who may need out-of-district placements. And it's important to note this one is really a variable, right? So it depends on the IEP, the Individualized Education Plan, and so that's, the team makes decisions there, and so that's highly variable. I'll go ahead to the next slide. This is regular day, which I spoke about a little earlier. So all expenses related to delivering core and general education are covered here. Personnel costs include school principals, instructional and support staff. Non-personnel costs are related to curriculum, curriculum materials, professional development, instructional material, instructional technology. And this cost center accounts for, as I mentioned, 58.74% of the total budget. So clerical salaries have been increased as a result of successful negotiations, so we accounted for that here. We also accounted for other expenses. This is a reallocation of school choice dollars, so students that are coming from outside our district and choosing to come to our place. We've accounted for that here. It's been used to offset some of the instructional expenses. And then contract services. So this covers the cost of providing transportation services for local students. And so that's increasing. We have to plan for that. Other noteworthy items in this cost center include addressing our priorities from the district strategic plan and things that have been noted by our stakeholders. So longevity in our new contract and RMHS guidance counselors, which we've spoken about. I'll go ahead to the next one. This is facilities. So the facilities cost center primary function here is to support the Reading Public Schools. So the school building facilities budget funds the salaries and expenses necessary to clean and maintain our 8 school buildings, preschool programs, central office spaces. That makes up 85% of the square feet of all municipal buildings. So it's a total of 935,000 square feet. This school building facilities budget accounts for 3.01% of the recommended budget. Other salaries here has been increased to account for salary adjustments. And non-personnel, of course, supplies and materials important, right? That our schools are clean and they're safe. So cleaning supplies, paper products, floor cleaning solutions, hand soap, et cetera, all accounted for in the FY25 budget. Noteworthy item for you that work orders created and filled for services here, total 2,357 work orders in FY23. And so facility, big shout out to the facilities department to really provide the necessary services to keep our schools standing tall. The district-wide recommended budget, which is the next slide, consists of 4 functional areas. So I'm going to talk about them in brief, each of them. This includes athletics, extracurricular activities, health services, and technology. This makes up 4.49% of the recommended budget. So in the next slide, you'll see the 4 different functional areas. I'm just going to outline the, we've got all the dollar amounts, everything are in your packet for your perusal. Primary function of athletics, of course, funds salaries and expenses necessary to run the high school athletics program. The extracurricular activities program budget funds the salary and stipends and some of the portion of the necessary expenses to offer extracurricular activities at the high school. Health services pays for the salaries and expenses and service the daily medical needs of the district's student population of roughly 3,800 students. And so school nurses do that work, right? They do the mandated health screenings, the illness assessments, the first aid, the daily medication treatments, and support students with chronic health issues like allergies and asthma and so on. The technology piece there in the bottom right corner funds the salaries and expenses required to operate and maintain our technology infrastructure, including our wide area network. Looks after wireless networks, servers, computer hardware, and peripheral devices, things like clocks and bells, and telecommunications equipment. The drivers here are all salary. So athletics, we've got a planned increase for contract services, so athletic transportation. In particular, we plan for a 5% increase. Health services, as you would imagine, medical services, medical supplies, I should say, an increase there. Technology and computer services, we had to plan for increases there. And so that concludes the coverage of the cost centers. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Tom to present on these 4 items.
Perfect, so Tom can take it away. So Tom, do you want us to do both while you're up? Do you want to do status union contracts and full day K?
Sure.
So these are 4 items that do impact FY25, but also beyond. Actually, no, we have Joe online. Do you want to let Joe go first?
Yeah, Joe can go first.
We can let Joe go first, so Joe doesn't have to stay the whole time. So Joe's gonna quickly speak about capital spending related to the schools, and I know there may be some interest in the Parker roof, and also Fieldhouse floor. Joe, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you.
Oh,
it looks like I'm finally in the game.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
So, where would you like to start?
So Joe, if you could just start by just maybe talking a little about the Parker roof project. I know that came up tonight, but then also maybe speak about the Fieldhouse floor. I mean, I know those two are connected too, and sort of how that came to be and what the impact of that's going to be as well. And then maybe just open up for questions in that area, capital.
Okay. So, when we originally put the bid out for the Parker roof replacement, we were about to go out to bid. This is right during COVID, post-COVID, I want to say actually. And we were advised by our architectural firm that we should wait and not go out to bid because there was long lead times on several products that wouldn't enable us to get the roof on the building and close it up by the start of school. So we put the project on hold, and then we sort of watched the market. And what happened was the prices, as everybody knows, were going through the roof on a lot of the steel and the petroleum products, which are the 2 biggest drivers in that project. When that happened, we had a $2.7 million capital allocation to do the work. And it was just, Reading was very fortunate. The low bid came in at $1.36 million. What we had done is because we weren't sure we were gonna have enough money, is we value engineered out a small section of the roof that's probably around 6,000 square feet, and I'll get to that in a minute and explain what we did. So we had a savings in the project, and we completed the project at the end of the summer, and with that savings, we were able to help out some other divisions within the town. We were able to there was money set aside for the and Sharon, you can correct me if you want, for the fire engine, for the fire truck. We were also able to move money and get 3 large pieces of mechanical equipment replaced on the roof of Parker, and then through a change order, add back in that last section, so the entire roof will be finished in April. So when we're done, we're gonna have 3 large pieces of mechanical equipment replaced, one that controls the auditorium HVAC, and that section of roof all getting done over April vacation, which was a great thing. And I'm just trying to see here if I can. We also had moved some money over to phase 1 of the Birch Meadow project, which was $600,000, Sharon, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we still have a savings. What we're asking to do is take $95,000 of the savings, the remaining savings, and do the Coolidge Middle School fire alarm panel. In the town meeting warrant, you're gonna see an explanation of what we're asking for. But in essence, originally we were gonna replace the entire system, the panel, and all the devices out in the field. And after speaking with our electrical engineer and the fire alarm company that we're contracted with, we felt that a more prudent approach on that would be to take that money and replace just the panel and several of the devices in the field that aren't compatible with the new style panel, which is $95,000. So in essence, it's half of what we would have been spending in the capital plan. And we've been working closely with Reading Fire on this also. That's gonna happen at the end of the school year. We're gonna do that as soon as school ends and before the camps go in over there. So that's pretty much what we did with the Parker funds.
Joe, do you mind just jumping in the field house real quick?
Sure, so you're gonna see an ask for, at April town meeting of $200,000 to do a design, which will include a full bid package that we can put out to bid to replace the existing field house floor in kind, and also replace the bleachers that are original to the building with newer aluminum bleachers that are motorized, that are actually a lot easier to break down and set up, and that have handicap accessible features. That project, we're estimating, will take probably 3 months to do, and would begin at the end of not this summer, but the beginning of the following year in June after graduation. We would start that project and have it ready for September. That project is valued at around $1.7 million.
The 200,000 is there to help firm up that $1.7 million estimate and make sure we know exactly what the conditions and scope are, Joe?
That's correct. We already have done a little legwork. The 200,000 is for design and to get a bid package put together with specifications and everything we need to scope it out. So basically something that can be put out on the street and bid.
All right, any questions for Joe?
This is just unrelated to this, but I think I don't know if I heard this at a select board meeting or another meeting. Is it true that you did some kind of renovation to Killam to provide a handicap bathroom in there, even though they don't have like a temporary renovation?
Yeah, we did. We actually, I think that was probably, I think that was last year we did that.
Last year.
The end of last year we did that. We had an individual that had trouble getting into, for the first time ever in 18 years that I've worked here, trouble getting into one of the bathrooms in there. So what we did was We consolidated one of the gang labs in the back of the building and in essence turned it into an accessible bathroom. So we were able to sort of solve two problems. We were able to still retain the bathroom that was the problem, but we were able to create another one because they have those large gang labs in the back of the building.
No, that's good. I've only seen the really
Many
tiny.
bathrooms, which are like, 1.5 feet near the front of the building. So that's, I had just heard about that through Scuttlebutt, and I figured while you were on the phone. So that's great that you were able to do that while we wait for the Killam project, which will, be 3 or 4 more years before anything starts getting built, I guess. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marion, I'm really glad you raised that too. Just that's one example of the many things I think that our facilities team is amazing. I mean, Joe and his leadership and just how he keeps things moving forward. Our buildings are so well maintained and constantly in good condition. They're on top of everything. I feel, Derek and I feel really fortunate that we work, I think alongside the best facilities team that we can imagine too. So while now I'm glad you raised that because I don't think they receive enough credit. They often do those things behind the scenes and they don't get the public sort of praise. And a lot of times that's, sort of helps us out before things become big issues. So just, I'm glad you pointed that out. And thanks to Joe and his team too.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
I think it's a question for Joe, but for like the 5-year capital plan, are these more like placeholders, like carpet and flooring, doors and windows, like some of those items, or are those projects already assessed like?
Well,
per
actually,
schools?
not to correct you, but it's a 10-year capital plan, just so you know. But what you're seeing on the capital plan are real numbers that are adjusted every year. What we do is we meet with Sharon Engstrom, and we look out 10 years and we look at projects and priorities. And what we do is we go out into the market, use our consultants if we have to, or just, or we do escalators, and we try to get accurate unit costs. So the numbers that you're seeing there are not just placeholders. They're fairly accurate numbers as we move down the road, and they're adjusted yearly. You're going to see the numbers do change. I wish they would go down, but they don't.
But are there any projects that are, call it deferred, that you're concerned about, or like anything?
One of the things we've been very lucky with is we did that phase 1 of that performance contracting initiative back in 2009, where we pulled a lot of mechanical equipment off the capital plan. That's why you see there's not a lot of boilers and not a lot of HVAC equipment looming out there right now. We also just completed phase 2 years ago, which we took another chip away of a lot of mechanical equipment under that performance contracting project. We do have some roof projects that are going to be coming up in the next 3 to 4 years. I want to say that the next one is going to be Birch Meadow and then the Coolidge Middle School roof. We've been lucky though. I mean, we have a really good preventive maintenance program. I shouldn't say we're lucky, but we take care of the roofs and these big dollar items so that they don't become a problem. And when we're replacing them, we're doing it kind of ahead of schedule in some cases, which is why sometimes you'll see us, we can push it out a year or two to get more time if we need more room in the capital plan. But, we do roof assessments. Those roofs and boilers and mechanical equipment are always going to be your big dollar items. So we're in pretty good shape right now.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything for Joe? Joe, as always, thanks so much. Appreciate all the work that you and the team do. It's amazing. We'll be talking in the next couple of weeks to go over the rest of the town budget, but looking forward to that conversation too.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll go back to the top of this particular conversation, the union contract stuff. I want to start first by thanking you all for the partnership that we had earlier this fiscal year, FY24 going into 25. That was huge for us. And all of our, I would say to a T, all of our unions recognize that and are also very appreciative. I think you all have known for a while that in many cases, some of our unions were severely under market. So we spent quite a bit of time trying to adjust that as much as possible this round. We're not done yet, but we're getting close. So we have, as you probably know, ratified jointly 3 of the 5 so far. Tomorrow night we'll be ratifying the 4th of the 5, which leaves the para one that's left. They are ratifying on Monday of next week, which means we can ratify at our meeting after that. So we would then be done with all 5. So we'll see. We expect everything will go smoothly in that space. It has for all the other ones so far. Just a quick summary for some of the work that we've done there. I'll just read, basically reading from our minutes from the last couple of times that we've done the ratifications. So for our custodians, we looked at the comparable communities, as you guys are aware, to make adjustments and look at that. The custodians used to have this kind of weird contract where they would go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, then step 10, then step 15, then step 20. So they would go 6 years with no increase as a custodian. Yeah, exactly, Joe. So one of the things we did is flatten that. So now it's just step 1 through 8, and they're going to have an increase through that first 8 years. And then their natural COLA thereafter. So that was done as part of year 1, is to change the structure to be that and move up to the middle of the market essentially. Year 2 and year 3 are 3% and 3 3/4% appropriately. And then there were some adjustments with regards to vacation time for them as well. So and that was the kicker for them. We gave them paid off Christmas Eve and paid off New Year's Eve. So our kids aren't in schools anyway. They're not going to be doing anything to clean up anything. So it just made natural sense that we could give those as a good faith give. So that one we ratified back in, I think December 14th was the ratification date on that one. The same meeting we ratified our secretary's contract. Very, very similar themes. In their particular case, we reworked the structure. There was no step 1 through 8 change necessarily, but we did the first year renormalize the contract to a scale that matched the market. But we thought about it over a 3-year period. So as we look at the market, what would the market be, and then forecast it out. So that first year got us to a number that we were comfortable for the first year. As you all know, that first year is our toughest year. That's why Derek said in salaries and salaries and salaries, probably 15 times, as he mentioned it. And then we spread that out. So level A, which are most of our secretaries, are going to have 5% increases in year 2 and 3. And level B, which are smaller, it's not the right way to put it, but lesser complexity secretaries will have 5.5% for those 2 years. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is get to a target number for that 3rd year, right? Other than that, we also gave them, paid vacation on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, right? Again, same thing. No kids are in schools anyway. Let's make sure it's a vacation. And so that worked well for them, and they were appreciative. I think, as I mentioned in the school committee meeting, one secretary said to us as we were closing negotiations, it was the first time that she'd felt seen in her 15 years in the district. I think that was, we like that.
Everybody knows that's awesome to hear.
Teachers' contract, we ratified on November 30th meeting. That was much more complex, as one would expect, which is why we started it much earlier, as you all know. That one also has a weird start date of September. Everything else starts July 1st, but theirs starts September through August of the following year. So in that case, we have COLAs. We didn't do a full restructure of the contract like we did with the other ones. It was relatively straightforward, but we added other things. So COLAs of 2 3/4 in the first year, 3 1/4, and then 4 across the years. And we added longevity, which is something we had not had for a long time, and most of our competitor districts do have. So we added longevity at years 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35. Minutes have an error, I just noticed. To be 500, 750, 1,000, 1,250, and 1,500. We also agreed to add a new lane to the process. So they used to have M15 and M30, and then you have to have a PhD. So we added M45. They used to be M and M30, So we added M45. There was discussion in other places, but M45 is where we ended up. And our thought process there is that they're demonstrating more education, it brings more value to our kids, et cetera. So let's go ahead and support that process. We also agreed to some reduction of after-school meetings in December, April, and one other month that the administration will work through with them. There's some adjustment to the parental leave language, including up to 20 days for non-birthing parents. We extended the working year for high school guidance counselors in particular. Those of you that have kids at the high school know that the guidance counselors work a little bit past the school year and start a little earlier to close the schedules and get all that aligned up. So we aligned the contract to actually the working conditions, essentially, is what we did. Then there's various different joint labor management agreements that we're working through. With regard to, Dr. Milczewski referred to it before, the special education workload for the teachers, that's going to continue. It basically carries over from contract to contract because we've seen such good positive work there. And they agree. We're going to have one as well focused on the DESE teacher evaluation rubric. That one's got an end date and a goal of implementing in FY25. So we're actually going to start that here soon to move that forward. We also have one on safe schools, just to make sure the lines of communication stay open and all the teachers feel heard and seen. In addition, one of the bigger ones that we have coming forward is stipends and club creation. Those of you at the high school know that process, especially in the high school, for club creation and dissolution can be a challenge. So we want to provide a little bit more flexibility and a process to add and subtract in the middle of the contract cycle. So right now, we cannot pay for a new club if it gets spun up by a student and it has a teacher, if it's not in the contract. And they don't get recognized with regards to their process for retirement and stuff like that if it's not in the contract. So we wanted to build a process that said, hey, for example, this happened a couple of years ago with DECA. A good friend of mine, her daughter launched DECA at the high school. And one of the biggest problems was I can't pay a teacher the stipend to do it, right? So DECA is one of the most popular clubs nationwide, and we couldn't launch it because we couldn't do a stipend. So we worked our way around that for that 1 year, but those are the kind of things we want to figure out how we have an actual process to do that. And there are some clubs that are in the contract that nobody's been in that club for 5 years, so why is it in the contract? So let's unwind that and have a process to do that as well. So Dr. Milczewski is going to be working through that with the union as it is. And then the last one was with regards to some nursing related concerns as well. So ultimately, I think I've been involved now in 2 of them in my time. The tenor of all of these is significantly different, and a lot of credit goes to Dr. Milczewski in that regard, and the work that he has done in building relationships around the district at every level across every person. So I just want to thank him for that as well. And I think all the union members that have been in negotiations, I think, have been very positive. Not once have I gotten into any sort of contentious yelling type matches, like unfortunately has happened in the past. So I'll stop there. But the other 2, you'll hear more about the one we're voting on tomorrow is the cafeteria workers, and we'll summarize it tomorrow during our meeting. And then, as I mentioned, if and when we're able to, we'll do the same for the bureau. Okay. So moving on to full day K, and then I'll come back and any questions on any of those we can answer. Full day K, as it stands, we are on track. The short answer is we're on track. We're currently planning in this year's budget a $600,000 offset out of the revolving account to support this year's budget. We may or may not need all of that $600,000. We've done in the past. We may say, okay, well, let's only make $500,000, in which case we have more in the revolving account to spread out even further. But as of right now, it's still $600,000, right? The FY25 budget in the model, and you'll see it in the model, calls for a $485,000 offset, and the tuition cost drops down to $1,450 for everybody that's going to be in the full day kindergarten process. So this year, FY24, I think it's $2,600. I'm trying to find my $2,650. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, $2,650, and next year it's going to drop to $1,450, and the year after that, FY26, it'll be 0.
Starting at 4,000 or something?
Started at 4,450. So we've made the progress we committed to, and we're well on track to make the progress we expect to be free full day kindergarten for FY26. Again, thank you for your partnership, and Sharon and Fidel for his partnership in working through the the community priority process. We actually haven't talked about this, so cat's out of the bag a little bit. I think we can roll the community priority off in FY27 after we had one full year of full implementation of free. But we would need FY26 as one more year, and I think Sharon already has that planned in the plan. But FY27, which might still be planned in the plan, we can probably roll that 150 off as we think about it, and we'll be then steady state and stable with it. So, long story short, we're good. We've made the progress we need to make, and our revolving fund will expire in FY27. It'll carry forward into FY27, 200,000, the current model, into FY27, and we'll use that last 200,000 in FY27.
Tom, just one more thing on that too. 2 years ago, we were on the list of communities that we do not want to be on of one of 24 that still have charge for kindergarten. We were the second highest charge, or it was 4,450, I believe. In FY25, that list now is down to 18 communities, and we're the second lowest tuition. So we're kind of trending in the right direction too as well. And then the last one is, I don't know if Sharon's still on as well, but Derek and Sharon, or just Derek was gonna give a quick update on the Killam Building project. I'm not gonna dive into just the project. I mean, Ed gave a good update on where we are on the project, but Derek's just gonna give a quick update on sort of where we are financially around that $2.2 million that was allocated.
Yeah, just 2 or 3 bullets on this one. So we have received a project budget and cost summary, and so there's no impact to our school department budget. It was taken from free cash. We've got 1.338 million of committed costs, and we have a contingency of 555,000. I was on with Sharon today when we had the opportunity to go through her inputting of invoices for reimbursement in the state, so it was nice to see that. If the project is completed ahead of time and the contingency remains, it can either be left open and then allocated, we'll have continued costs that are related to the project manager. So it could be used that way, or it could be folded back into free cash. And so Sharon, are you there? She is.
Yes, I am.
Did I get it all right? Is there anything we should add?
I guess the only thing I would clarify is that in fiscal '23, we put this money out there for the feasibility study at $2.2 million. And by the end of fiscal '23, we had to do purchase orders. So we did them based on the budget that we expected. So that does make it difficult to not turn some of it back to free cash, because there's one for the project manager, one for the architect, designer, and for different types of costs. And where the prior year, it could be a little hairy about how we do that. So we have one for, that includes some contingency. Because they are assigned to a person or a company or a person, and so you can't change it. You have to leave it where it is. So I can't say, oh, I've got 100,000 left on this. Let me change this to the contractor who is doing the construction. I can't do that. So we may be forced to close some of it to free cash, and then if we choose to, ask for more free cash towards the project, if we so need to.
Thanks, Sharon. And so that brings us to a close.
You said 1.3 million had been spent, 500
It was committed costs.
Committed costs.
Yeah.
500,000 was contingency. That's 1.8. What's the other 0.4 to get us to 2.3
So
million?
there's another 300. There's another 306 that are uncommitted costs at this time.
Okay. I mean, is that more likely to go to free cash because it's uncommitted, or?
I couldn't say
Okay.
at this time.
I think Sharon was jumping on too.
Sorry, Sharon.
I'm gonna look.
That was from the February 8th statement that Collier shared with us.
I'm gonna look at what we see on our general ledger. So on our general ledger, all of it would be encumbered now that I think about it, because it's all POs from a prior year. Of course, Munis does not want to cooperate when I'm looking for things. Right. Just one more second. I will say that when we had one of our meetings with the OPM, they did state that it's very unlikely we would spend the whole 2.2 million. They thought that was a good and generous number, so we certainly are not gonna go over. But we might be in a spot where some of it closes to free cash, and if we wanna use that, we might have to reallocate it, so we'll just find it.
Sharon, like, as you're looking for that, just on that topic, if it were, you know, to kind of return to free cash, what's the, like, would there be a special process that we would have to go through, given the building project, in order to utilize that, or is it, would it follow kind of a normal course of?
It would probably follow a normal process. I could document how much closed out from the 2.2 to free cash to make it, you know, see like it's a wash. Like, let's say it's 500,000 goes back. I'm just guessing. I don't know how much is going to go back. We could ask for that, saying it closed back to free cash, and we'd like to use that much more towards the project. So, I mean, if there's a way to avoid it, I certainly will. Like, because obviously the OPM is going to be on for the entire project, so that's a cost that will be there the whole time. But I just want to make sure we follow all the right laws and we do this appropriately. But that's where I'm a little bit worried that some of it might have to close to free cash. So I do have this up here. We have a $2.2 million budget. We've actually expended the 108,331, which is what I had. I did a reimbursement request to the MSBA today for that, and then it has to be signed by the town manager and by our OPM, and then I can send it off to MSBA. So I'm going to be doing them as frequently as possible, just so that they don't become overbearing. And also, too, I think we start to receive funds from them the sooner we get them in, so that never hurts. So from my perspective, when we talk about what's encumbered, all of it's encumbered because we did it based on the budget that was laid out for us for town meeting, because at the time we hadn't assigned an OPM, we hadn't assigned an architect. We just kind of put open POs to put the vendor in later based on the budget that we had for the project, just to make sure the money didn't close out to free cash.
Go ahead, Andrea. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go for it.
related to
Yeah, go for it.
the budget. So I'm looking at page, I'm looking at our package, and I'm looking at page 31.
Budget, the packet.
It's the packet.
So that's the budget development process, Emery?
So I'm looking at our finance package, and I'm looking at the table that says recommended budget by categories of spending. It's the one that has all of the budget categories as defined by.
Okay, so 31. So that's. Okay, so it's actually page 59 of the packet, page 31 of our, okay.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, of our budget.
So the clerical salaries, we know why that went up by 11, almost 12%. Other salaries,
Negotiations.
right, and I thank you for that, because that's a 17% increase, which I know exactly why it is. My question is on the contract services. This is all that we pay for stuff that is not on payroll. Is there any opportunity to look at that, and you can look at it and see what can you actually, because it's a recommended budget of 2.8 million. Is there any opportunity that you can put things on payroll that would yield to like savings? This is just like a general question. When I look at contracting services, sometimes if you do things in-house, you save money. Is there any opportunity there? So it's just a general question.
So this is always a variable line, right? So contract services, we're always looking at contract by contract as they come up. What's the scope of services offered? What's our capacity to handle it in-house? Does the cost seem reasonable? And then, you do a time and effort analysis. Do we have the resources to deploy, the personnel to deploy towards addressing whatever that particular need is, or is it more cost effective and efficient to outsource it to maybe a specialist? So that's the evaluation that takes place. So that analysis happens with each contract that's offered. And believe me, where we can bring them in.
Yeah, it's 2.3% overall. It's pretty solid, but it's a large number. It's 2.8 million. So if there is an opportunity there, maybe it's worth looking into it. And then, the reason that I brought that up is that 2.8 million, most of it is compromised by regular day. Special ed is 1.5 million, and the athletics is 419K. So special ed is the biggest there, and I'm not too familiar with that, but it's mostly that, right?
I mean, so, yeah, in both those cases, it's busing.
It's busing, right?
And, you know, that is, we have talked about looking at purchasing buses ourselves. It's not feasible at the current time. We actually had one that Tom and I were trading notes on because another district was selling theirs, but they were selling it and it didn't work. So, you know, that is one we looked at.
One
We
man's
just-
trash.
Exactly. It is one we looked at, but we just actually agreed and voted to start the new contract. And unfortunately, this is not a market with a lot of competition. So it's one we have to take what we get in the busing space.
Especially,
It's pretty flat, like 2.3%. It's pretty good, but I just out of curiosity.
yeah, so we did put out a bid, so we put out an RFP for transportation services. There were plenty of inquiries, and we sent out packets to at least 8 different providers. We received 1 response to the bid. The special education transportation is negotiated through, we belong to a consortium or a collaborative, the SEAM Collaborative does some of the special ed transportation. They hadn't finished negotiations or on their contract services. We planned for a 2.75% increase for special ed transportation.
My next question is on page 57.
Of your packet.
You have the packet before it had their slides in it?
Oh, I have the one that Jackie sent out.
But she sent 2, so that's why I'm asking. One didn't have their slides in it yet, so the page numbers were
Let
all
me see if I can give you the,
Are you looking at like the PDF page number or the page number at
right,
the bottom of the page?
it's a PDF number. The bottom of the page says 56.
56, yeah.
It's like 70-something.
Appendix A.
It's actually 57, I'm sorry.
Oh,
57.
So then it's 75 of the PDF.
Yep.
Is that the regular day cost center table? It doesn't look
Correct,
like the same
regular
thing,
day
yeah.
cost center, yeah. So my question here was, under supplies and materials, it says curriculum elementary.
Yes.
And that went from 620K in FY 21, 638K in FY 22. And then it dropped considerably to 117K.
Yep.
In FY 23.
63.
Yeah, and then 153 for the recommend. So it's a big swing, and when I see stuff like that, I just wanna see like what's the logic behind it, that's all.
So I wish I could speak to the FY 21 year, but I can't.
We can't.
And I think that predates the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning as well. But what I can tell you about the current budget numbers is we sought to streamline the purchasing process. So in collaboration with the stakeholders, so I met with all of the constituents, our internal constituents, and asked them about their budgets and what they anticipated for the next year. We thought it would be a good idea to centralize budgets. So we did have some decentralized purchasing taking place with school sites making their own purchases of their own products and thus creating a palette of many different items. So we wanted to streamline that, have everybody on board with what was being offered in terms of the textbooks, the consumables, any other supplies, materials that were related. And so that's why you see the increase between FY 24 and 25 is the centralization of those budgets, right? Which include English language arts, they include math, they include reading, science, and those workbooks and consumables that I mentioned. So now the purchasing will be funneled through the central office and through Sarah Hardy. So it'll permit for a fuller implementation of the curriculum that they've decided upon, and kind of bring our efforts across the sites into alignment. People do have, they do want to buy different little programs that they're used to or that they've had success with in the past, so they do have that latitude. They can always make that request.
Just to add historical context, the earlier years are the purchase of the new math curriculum in the elementary level, and they drop off after you purchase the curriculum. But we also just purchased the ELA curriculum, But you don't see that in this budget because that's mostly covered by the ARPA funds. Right, so they don't show, ARPA funds don't show up here, this is operating funds.
And then on the same page, am I, so, and Tom might have touched on this, but it looks like there is no more substitute in FY 24 and 25. Let go, so under professional salaries, substitutes, it looks like there is no budget for it in FY 24 and 25.
Yes, so I do see that, and so there's a reason for that.
Right.
To say it's, presumably it's the actual versus budget, but then presumably there's some kind of budget somewhere because
It's down in the other salaries category.
So that
Like
means-
look 6 lines down.
There are multiple, yeah.
But the substitutes appear in both places.
But he did
Yeah.
before.
So, yeah, there is a substitute line, yeah, in under other salaries. But there are substitute lines also in other cost centers as well.
it's definitely confusing.
Yeah, there is still a need for substitutes and they have been provided.
So they just move probably to the other salaries line maybe?
Is that second substitutes line for para substitutes? Just regular paras?
No, so there are substitute lines in different cost centers for different designations, right? So
And that looks like it's across, like the special ed, like the substitute line also goes away, but I do see that. So I'm looking at page 59. So the substitute line is also gone from the professional salaries and the other salaries for the special ed. Is that no need for it, or is it?
So there are, there's one substitute line, there's,
The other one's blank too, is what he's saying.
Yeah, no, that's a good catch.
Also got moved again.
I can't figure out where it went to.
I'm also
Okay.
wondering, I know recently we haven't been using a ton of sub-paras.
So
So if I had to, Derek, that's my guess is that everything's folded into the teacher line, 'cause I can't think of a circumstance the past year where we've been using a sub-para.
maybe that's why.
so I can certainly dig into that one. What I do have in front of me is that we have provided for daily teacher subs, long-term subs, and they are, we do provide them by site as well. So each school site has a particular sub-line, and so we've allocated dollars out for substitutes that are anticipated at their sites. For those ones, we've attempted to level fund. So remember that these are summary lines as well, so there are a number of lines that roll up into that, so any adjustments we make at the sites will be reflected in that summary line that we've got there.
Another one on this page to note was the under supplies and materials, special education. The actual for FY 23 was 125K, and then final budget for FY 24 is 18K. So that's a big swing there, but I guess there's probably logic behind it, probably.
So I think in each case, so what's happened is, so the process as it unfolds, so you understand, so I can convey it to you is, so we take the cost center, this cost center in particular, the special ed cost center, we run it line by line, and then we sit with the parties that are involved, so in this case, the assistant superintendent of student services and the director, and we go through it line by line, and we say, okay, so based on historical spend, what does it look like? And then if we have to dig into the detail, Munis allows us to go down even further, like dig down, so I can see exactly what you spent it on and come up with the invoices and everything for the services provided, so we can say, hey, so listen, is this a service that you're anticipating you'll need next year? So we try and get down to a very granular level. This allows us to, as with the contract question you posed earlier, we don't want to be wasteful, so we want to allocate dollars out exactly the way they're going to spend them. We want to stay away from like miscellaneous lines and dollars that are unaccounted for and say, hey, listen, you've got to articulate a plan for this year. We're going to review all of the software you've got, all of the textbooks, all of the materials that you're going to purchase, and so tell us what is anticipated for the upcoming year.
I mean,
So-
overall, this is great, because you're going from 150K to like 18K, it's fantastic in budget terms, but, and then,
So
on those.
before, sorry, I just wanted to just mention in response to your previous question. So we do have a paraprofessional substitute line, a nurse substitute line, and long-term teacher substitute line. We also provide for custodial substitutes, and then we have daily teacher substitutes that are at each site. So, you know, that we're trying to plan for every contingency.
They fall all in the professional salaries category probably.
So they'll be summarized in whichever substitute line you're seeing there, whether it's professional salaries or other salaries.
And you mentioned that you try to like allocate the unidentified expenses to an actual expense line. Well, on that note, there is an other expense on the special education for FY 23 for $51,000, and there is a planned recommended budget for $1,500. That's the other expenses. So it looked like that, again, that went from $51,000, not sure what that other is, but you are budgeting $1,500 this coming year.
Bottom of page.
So I've got it, so I see it, but that's gonna require more detail than I've got on my
That's fine.
spreadsheet here or my thing. If you're very interested in knowing, I can certainly track
I
that down.
only bring this up because in those, most of them, they're kinda in line, but when you see like big swings like that, you always like wonder what, and you probably know more. I just point those out in case like, so it's just for our benefit at all, that's all.
Nope, I appreciate that.
If you look at that, I think it's reclassification. Because you have in other expenses 1,500, but in supplies and materials, other 1,500 of the previous year. So if you look at the two others in that, in the two subsections, one of them is in FY 24 1,500, the other one is in FY 25 1,500. It's an offset, it just moved from one place to the other. You see that?
I see your
Andrew?
another, 40 line 44, oh, sorry, a couple lines here. But that is,
Same thing with the instructional equipment, the same thing happened there too.
this other that you're referring to, the 51,709, is actually the only, FY 21, FY 22, FY 24, no expense in that line.
Right.
So it was an exceptional circumstance.
Oh,
They've noted there.
that's all my questions.
Go ahead, Joel.
Just, hopefully this is a quick one, but on the, I guess, page 50/68, like the revolving funds, how should I read like the, how's it work again, like the school lunch program? Like it shows a loss of 655,000, but is that like a timing difference or?
So, hang on just a second.
So it's like, I think it's 50, page 50 in your packet, but
What's the budget? Do you have the budget book numbers? Like what is
It's the page,
68,
68? Okay.
sorry.
it's page 50 of the
Special
budget
revenue
book.
fund.
Oh, it's 50 in the budget.
68 of the.
School lunch program, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 50 in the budget book. Yeah, did you get that 50 in the budget book?
Spending down, if everyone correct here.
So 50 in the budget book, and the
Just
school
the
lunch
same.
program, oh yeah, so,
Spend down and.
right. You know, so this would have been, so there were a large number of, so with regard to the revolving accounts, you're not supposed to have not supposed to carry a large balance from year over year. And so this was an attempt to spend down some of those dollars. I know that large equipment purchases were made for multiple schools, to include the high school, and so this was the summer in which those installation of various things took place, from serving counters to cooking convectional ovens or large stand-up ovens. So good for us in terms of spending down the dollar amount to purchase the latest and greatest equipment. Also great in terms of productivity and in order for us to be able to meet the needs of the students and the number of meals that we provide. And so also gives staff a learning opportunity, right, to be exposed to new cooking technology, et cetera.
Yeah, also FY 23 was high because of the COVID bump. A lot of federal money went into that account, that revolving account. So it's not like we're overcharging kids or anything else like that in that account. It was a COVID bump, and then how do you use that money? You can buy as much food as you want, but only kids are gonna eat so much. So our director there said, hey, we need a refrigerator here so we can store more real food and be able to cook more real food for our kids. And so things like that are what happened to spend that money down, Joe.
And can what's the balance that you can carry? Is there like a,
I believe it's 15%. I believe. So now I'm giving you that answer. I'll have to go back and double check it. You know, so we are anticipating an increase in the service of food with the rollout of the free breakfast program. So we're talking about that and how that's gonna, what the implications are for us. Staff will have to start earlier. It's free breakfast for all. So there's no differentiation between free and reduced students now. It's free breakfast for all and free lunch.
Some state mandate for that choice.
so you wouldn't get money with that though, right?
We
Or
would
would
get
you?
money.
You would, okay.
Actually, the Student Opportunity Act money is where that is what's funding that right now.
Okay.
Just as a follow-up with that though, do you have to add staffing now, more staffing at the
This is
school,
part of
not
the
just
contract negotiations, Mary,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
parents and teachers, like people have to be there, or just bodies to keep an eye on the kids?
Piloting at Killam right now. They just
Okay.
started it after a break. I think it's mostly paras that service it. My kid goes to the
Cafeteria manager, first of all, first and foremost, somebody has to prepare the food, then you have to have somebody there to watch too, yeah.
We anticipate that's an extra like hour and a half potentially for a cafeteria manager to be there. It's funny you mentioned that. Kill them today.
Kill them, they're eating in the classrooms, so they go through the kitchen, they get a breakfast, they bring it in a morning meeting, they're eating it in their classrooms, so the classroom teachers are supporting the cleanup piece, but it's all cold items still, but I think there's plans for hot items later.
There is. We're trying to keep it simple for week 1 or day 3. So the menu today was smoothies, cereals, yogurt parfaits, bagels, blueberry muffins, corn muffins, grain bars, fresh fruits and fruit cups. 165 students today, so it's about a third of the school participated in breakfast. So, which will, so anyways, that's something that we're gonna have to wrap our head around is how do we do that and keep costs down in terms of just staffing. But also we think it's an opportunity. We actually think if we do it well, it can be a revenue generator in terms of in that revolving account for help us to be able to expand some of our programming and offerings and quality of food. So it sounds like it's a hit. Do this week.
So he's in the before school program, so he was already getting breakfast, but now he's very excited that he gets.
And then lots more friends too.
Yeah, so he's like, now I eat at before school, I go to the gym, and then I come back and I get a bagel and I eat it with my friends in the classroom. He's very excited. There's lots of carbs happening for him.
So happy customers.
The cost for cafeteria wise is just short of $32,000 increase in FY '25 for that plan.
Were you done, Joe?
Sorry.
So first, congrats on the contracts and negotiating. Glad to hear it all went well. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you all for hard work that goes into that. Second, I sit on the Killam PTO board, and the principal told us that next year enrollment for kindergarten was way down for Killam. Is that a district-wide trend that we're seeing? And if yes, is that going to impact the cost of the full day K rollout at all,
It's
or?
only 220 kids, it's in Torrance.
So Marianne's done her homework. So we're at
I was saying, I'm
we're
not
at
there yet.
We're at 220, which we're close to about 50 under what we were. I think it was 268. Marianne, correct me.
Yeah, no, I was looking at tomorrow night's packet, cause I was gonna ask the question, you beat me to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little preview for tomorrow, but I think we are projected 268 for the year. We're at 220 right now.
I think you said like 57 kids you're expecting to enroll but haven't signed up.
We know there's 57 students out there that according to the census, whether those students are going to enroll, whether sort of what's going on with it, as we don't know, we're trying everything we can to possibly locate them. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. I do anticipate if the number stayed at 220, you would obviously have to look at the model. But over the past couple of years, last year was the past couple of years, it was about 80% of the students had enrolled by this point. I don't know if that trend will hold because this year we thought we've done more to front load communication around kindergarten. All that to share, like last year at this point, we added about 40 more students from where we were to the beginning of the school year. So we still think we'll be able to boost that number up. Killam is much lower. Killam, we only have 43 students registered right now, which is 15 below what the census anticipated we would be. Denise Iozo was telling me, I know those kids are out there, we're gonna find them, so.
She's gonna knock on doors.
Yeah, more to come, but the numbers K do look a little lower than what they were this year, but we built that in around the model around 268. But I still feel confident we'll get closer to that number at this point.
So send anybody, tell anybody that hasn't registered yet.
That's what they said at the meeting. They said, find a neighbor that has a 4-year-old and tell them to give a call.
And there are a couple of siblings that we know,
Mhm.
but also they need to register.
You guys have any other questions? Andrew?
Last one.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The Libby Scholarship Donation Fund, that's the 1.2 million FY '24. Is there any restriction on that one?
So-
What is the,
So with any donation, there usually comes with some parameters as to how they would like it spent, and then there'll be some guidelines around it. And so I could certainly find out more information about the Libby Donation Fund. I haven't touched that fund yet.
It was just a couple of years ago.
I have
It was
to-
a year ago.
It was,
Is that for high
if you give me
It
2
was
minutes,
right when I was going out of the door and I heard about it, and I'm like, this is great, but I never,
we were in a meeting we met about it.
but yeah, I was going out. I don't know if Sharon has any info on that, on the restrictions with the Libby Scholarship Donation Fund.
I don't have any, on the restrictions, but it was received a little bit differently than a normal scholarship, which is in perpetuity. This is to be spent down. There's criteria for sure that they worked out, but I wasn't part of those discussions, and the school committee would have to approve.
I do remember it now.
I've got it,
You got it too.
Estate of David B. Libby, a lifelong Reading resident.
The Chronicle article says deserving and underprivileged Reading Memorial High School grads.
So I remember what we did last year was there was no other sort of qualification around what it meant to be deserving and underprivileged. So I know that's sort of what our high school team had looked at too. And I do know that last year they had awarded 20 scholarships to 22 students. And I think I have to go back and look at the exact amount of what they were. That's great. I believe it was 5,000 each, but I have to double check.
There's some very,
4,000
there's some very interested people here.
4,000
You know
each.
about this Libby scholarship.
Yeah.
4,000 each.
There you go,
For
there's
our
some,
definition
there's some
of
information
deserving
for
and
you.
underprivileged, right?
Anything about Kentucky in there at all, or,
No, to answer the other part of the question, if it holds the way it does, which I don't think we will think it will, it doesn't impact next year. If anything, it means the spend down in, the revolving fund might be spent a little before FY '27. So it's not.
Functional difference.
Functionally, it doesn't really matter.
you have some?
I'm
Yeah,
looking
go
through
ahead.
my, I'm looking through
go
my
ahead.
questions and people have asked, I've got someone's crossed out because people asked things.
You have them all written down already? Too organized.
School choice was mentioned in the slides, and I see that is a program that has expanded, and I'm curious what the sort of trajectory and projections, is that something that it's grown over 2 years and it's gonna stabilize, is that something that's gonna continue to grow further, and what the direction is there?
This is a great district to be in, word is out. So it's grown from
I
seven.
think I live here, go on.
It's grown from 7 to 17 this year, and so that's the anticipated income that's increased there. We took that and we used it to offset some of the regular day instruction expenses, but we are anticipating that will grow.
The only other thing I'll add too is I remember Tom made a comment last year at school committee on the floor was, do we want to start to like market this like strategically on Facebook or other social media sites? And I think our thought was we may disagree, I don't know, we'll find out. In the first 2 years, we really want to be kind of a slower rollout. It was sort of something new that we were experimenting with, want to see if there would be any drawbacks or any issues with it that we haven't really experienced yet. It was also important for us to open this up to have for the staff members' children. In some districts, you'll put that in the union contract that staff members' children, if you reside outside Reading, can still attend school, but you don't get the $5,000 sort of reimbursement. So this is our way to also, kind of support that. I don't think we're at a place yet where we are ready to sort of like maybe open it up, and maybe, significantly, but I think to kind of continue to inch the program forward, and particularly where there's spots where we may not be as efficient with our seats. For example, if we have class sizes, there's some, you'll see at some grade levels, if we have 3 classes of, 16, maybe that's bad, three classes, a grade level of 50 for 3 classes. Do you go 2 classes of 25? Do you go, 16, 17, then if you do that, those are kind of some spots that you can target to maybe fill some seats to have more reasonable class sizes. So I think our approach has been, let's, do it in a thoughtful way that we know that we can support the students within our district. And also let's like really prioritize the grade levels in the schools where there's kind of those bubble classes where we feel like we can fill seats and that's gonna, not have a large really impact on the day-to-day offerings of the school and also provide us with the $5,000 too. So, and I think the generally it's been a pretty well-received program. So I think our hope is to probably continue that. And those conversations will continue in spring.
Good.
Feel free to give a dissenting voice if you'd like on
Nope.
that.
Yep, what you said. I mean, you'll see it in the packet. We got an email this week asking, when are you opening? So I can apply.
You're good, that's awesome. Unbelievable.
Cool, thank you.
You know,
Nah, I think that's all I need.
Food service director was watching and she just wanted to share that we do get reimbursed $2.65 per breakfast. So that helps. I just asked her what the average cost of breakfast is and she gave me a longer answer depending on what we provide, so.
tell her to be to thankful that she's the one person watching, so thanks.
They're losing money on Jack Sisson, so.
Is it probably the meal that has the least amount of waste compared to other foods? Sounds like you're serving things that kids would eat more than, salads and.
Muffins, like the high school has those grab and go cart now, and those kids who just will grab a yogurt parfait and eat it that way, or grab a muffin, so there's not really a lot of waste. And she says the average cost of breakfast is in the range of 65 cents to $1. So she thinks we're on each breakfast, the district gets about $1.60.
It's a good business to be in.
It's a good, yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty good.
To help cover the cost of the staff and other investments in the.
Not like we're just, raking in free money from.
Not raking in free money, no,
Way
no, making sure.
to clarify.
Thank you.
We're on a high.
Anyway.
Jeff, let's be on the high. We're making money.
Catherine's been Catherine Franzetti is food services director. She's been very conscientious and very innovative in her approach and very, sensitive to kids' tastes and trying new things and introducing a variety of new foods. And so participation is skyrocketing. So we're anticipating that will continue.
Derek, good point.
Local business.
Yeah, she's been very enthusiastic, and that's carried over to the rest of the staff. So when Tom was talking about having the right people in the right seats earlier, this is another case of that happening. So the difference in participation is really tremendous year over year.
Jeffrey, thank you. We're not trying to generate a huge sort of revenue stream there, but I also think that does help us in the lunches too around gluten-free options. Some of our some like food sensitivities, allergies, other different types of foods that may be a little bit more expensive too. It allows us to expand in maybe ways we haven't been able to too. But thank you for clarifying, because that's not our intent.
Not the message you want to get out. I understand.
That is not the message. That's not the headline from our
That's not what we
presentation.
want to see in the article. Yeah, I got
Thank
you.
you.
I got you. Any other questions from anybody? Guys, thank you so much. I can echo Emily's, sentiments. The work on the contracts. We all follow the headlines in other districts, and the fact that we're not there, in fact, we're early and we're like ridiculously early in some of this is a huge testament to the collaboration and efforts on your side, and then for everyone that works in the district, and I think we appreciate the the gratitude that's given to us. I think to a member, it was because we all appreciate the efforts that are done. They're all part of the community, whether they live here or not. So I'm thrilled with the success on the back end. So thanks again for all the work.
Thank you. So this is in large part due to your collaboration and support. So we certainly are grateful and appreciative. It's allowing us to move forward. Thanks for your time and attention today and your thoughtful questions.
Guys, this
If there's
was
anything
awesome.
else you
Really,
wanna
thanks so
know,
much. Really
please
appreciate it.
Don't hesitate to send me a note. All right. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great job.
Alrighty, so we are now on to future agenda?
Minutes is before agenda items, I just looked. Future.
I have to talk to Jackie about that. That's not how I like to do it. No, it's
No,
fine.
there's the minutes from the financial forum, I think, right?
So, yeah.
Throwback.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
minutes
I'm gonna
from the
remember.
25th, am I right?
correct? Unless the minutes are wrong,
I'm
but
gonna
I'm
have to
pretty sure
look.
that sounds right.
No, that's right.
Didn't check my calendar, but.
Hopefully nobody remembers well enough to criticize the minutes and change them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, it was also, we had the MBTA Communities presentation and CPA, but I think a lot of us kind of know MBTA Communities ad nauseum. Follow.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again.
It was new to us then, but now
A little long. A little long. Thanks, guys.
Let's just look for my name to see if I said anything.
Any questions on the minutes?
You're
Thank
way at
goodness
the
this
end
one
of the
wasn't
packet,
pickable.
page 99.
Oh, okay, I just got it, yeah, I had the cuts. I was fine with them when I reviewed them before. They were very high level, because there was a lot there.
I'm just getting nostalgic about a meeting where MBTA wasn't the controversial topic.
That's right.
Oh, it's on there.
All right, well, I'll take a motion on the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the 10/25/23 financial forum as presented.
Thanks, Mark. All those in favor? Oh, God.
So good.
Oh, so good. 9-0, Jackie. If you didn't see the arms, it was awesome. It's a thing of beauty. All right, so future agenda items. So I know,
What's next, town budget?
we have, so I don't know if everyone saw in their,
She just sent something today to
yeah,
us.
so Jackie's, so Matt mentioned it last night at the select board meeting that he was close and they were just putting the dot in the i's and crossing the t's. So then Jackie sent that over. I haven't opened, I saw it come in my email. I haven't opened it yet. And so I think we have, I don't know if we know the order, but I think the next two meetings are like we've done in the past where we get half in the first half and then half in the first meeting and then another half in the second meeting. And then the warrant's probably
So-
the.
We're gonna have perfect attendance all through March, every Wednesday, right?
Exactly,
Be all
exactly,
clear?
that would be great. So I think that's where we're at. I mean, I think for other future agenda pieces, so to Joe, to your, was it Joe you brought this up?
CPA.
I did mention CPA.
Yeah.
I also found Jackie's email from February 15th to you and me, and Matt and Sharon, which did give a proposed set of which things to
Yep.
go, but I mean, if I recall, last year we didn't, it's changed between when we first talked about it.
Yeah, I just think
and now.
they shuffle them up as who's
Right,
available.
if DPW is there on the 6th and public safety's there on the 13th, none of this is written in.
So we might not, so that's the other thing, we might not need the 20th if we can cram on the 13th, we do the rest of the budget presentations and the warrant, voting on the
Yep.
warrant
Is that
articles.
the
Yep.
mallet? Malay?
So we might be able to do things on the 6th and the 13th, and then we might not need the 20th, but just for everyone else's benefit, those are the next three meetings. So any recommendations, Joe, on when we should, was there any indication as far as when we needed
I
to
believe
decide
the
on?
board instructed the town manager to reach out to the committees, so I assume that you'll hear from Matt. This was literally last night, so
Yeah,
you
so
just
we'll
have
probably
one
hear
day
from,
to reach out to.
we'll probably hear from Matt, for the 6th, because, there's no sense, we didn't
There's
hear
no,
from
right,
him.
yeah.
So that's a question of like, if the chief of police is not available on the 6th, then that would switch to the 13th.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, thanks, Jackie, she's displaying.
She's displaying the
Yeah.
same email that I'm
Yep.
looking at here. Thank you, so it's not, yeah. Sorry, my screen's big, but it's not that.
So Joe, is this to get it on for next fall's annual?
Oh, so in terms of CPA thing, so that was they talked about this a lot because it's March, like the day after tomorrow. And it's not, the way the CPA works is that it has to be approved by the voters, but the way you get something on the ballot from the voters is either a petition or a town meeting. And, there aren't any regular town meetings between April and the November elections, so it would have to be a special town meeting. And it would have to be
I think they talked about June to get it for September.
Yeah, well, so Ben Cares originally talked about June and the proposal that he made to the select board back in December. Looking at it last night, and of course, we're a lot closer to June than we were in December. They were trying to do the math to work backwards from November. It's like you need 60 days before the election, plus you need the There's the period of time after any town meeting in which there may be a
Two-week
petition.
reconsideration.
Exactly, reconsideration period. So this gets you to roughly 75 days before November 5th, which puts you into August.
It's hard to get a town meeting quorum with people on vacation. I mean, town meeting members need to know about, because you need a
Yes,
quorum to have it be a valid vote.
So where they went with this was basically, they're gonna ask the committee to look at it, but they said the committee might come back and be like, yeah, not gonna happen. We're exploring the topic, and one of the things we've discovered in exploration is that this is not enough time. That's going to be the committee's.
Winchester tried to do it, and they're gonna maybe get it on their fall ballot, because they tried to start like last year, and then they delayed, and it took them a long time.
Yeah.
I think, from what I was reading articles, so
Yeah,
we
it's
would
a
probably face similar.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna try to do the committee's job that they're apparently gonna be charged with of figuring out when it could happen.
So
But
but
it's-
for us, so maybe on the 6th, we should add as an agenda item, discussion and possible nomination or recommendation, I don't even know what the right word is.
We select, I think.
Select,
Ex
yeah.
officio members are
Yeah.
selected.
Doesn't the chair make that decision?
I don't like to wield that kind of power,
Oh.
Jeffrey,
I mean, it's not like we voted on liaison appointments, right? It's like, you know. we
No, but
kinda-
this is different. This is like ARPA or
But because of the objectives of the CPA, like they were talking last night, when they were picking resident members, or maybe look at you guys, like former members of the Conservation Commission, like people who have interest in that area that could have been expertise.
I don't think they realize they're two former CONSCOM members on FinCom.
See, they can kill multiple birds with one stone, right, with you guys?
Yeah, that was one of the things was they had they wanted open space to be represented, but the way ex officio members work, it has to be from exactly one committee because the committee has to select, presumably by voting, who represents the committee. And so you can't have conservation and trails and town forest have one representative because they're not one committee. They could have three or none. So it was, what they voted on was none, but with the two resident spots in the motion that created the committee, they said that they would give, selected by the select board with preference for current and former members of trails, town forest, and conservation.
I forget if they included historic in that, or whether historic had its own slot, I'd have to look at it.
Historical commission, there was a bit of like historic district, and I think they landed on historical commission.
Yeah, one of those two. I
Yeah,
always get them mixed.
because historic district is specific to the district, historical is to the whole town, so they,
Which seems better for
Yeah, so-
CPA, because it's
exactly.
broader.
so I think they said, so one of the 5 ex officio members is historical commission.
But yeah, they seem like they wanted this focus on affordable housing, because that could combine it with the trust fund, I don't know, housing's so expensive, I don't know. They could take it all and buy one house a year, I don't know what they're gonna do.
I'm not, that's not my area of expertise either,
No.
but I do know we have a problem.
But it's good that FinCom has some background that could add
Yes,
extra
I was-
bonuses to it.
I mean,
So I'll take, to Jeffrey's point, I will check, we'll have it as some type of an agenda item, coming up. And I'll figure out whether it's an appointment where I, take bribes and, I'm just kidding. But I'll, whether it's a vote or what's the best process for it, but I'll figure that out. I'll circle back with Matt and others and ask that question, and then I'll have the agenda kind of appropriately bulleted for that.
Yeah, I mean, considering that we're meeting weekly and all the other committees that are appointing people don't,
Yeah, we just.
we don't have to do it next
We'll
week.
fit it in, we
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
talk
I
about
mean,
it every meeting.
Yeah, we don't, and
Yes.
we don't necessarily, we can have it, we could have it discussed and vote, or just discussed, and then we can keep.
You
moving.
could post a vote every week, and even if we
Exactly.
don't, we pick the time when we feel like
Exactly.
voting.
Yep, yeah, so as more things kind of come clearer,
See how
we'll.
long the budget presentation takes.
Cool. Anybody else have anything, future agenda, any other kind of
Just a
questions?
question, John, for you on the recap. Do you have like the timeline? Because that's gonna, that's gonna have to go, get our approval and then go to town meeting and probably be voted on, so.
Plan was feasibility studies in February through April, and then schematic design April through July.
They haven't
Not this year.
even picked a site yet, I mean, they're still.
There's 3.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's 2, right? 2 really that are viable.
I haven't seen enough comments on what.
I went to the meeting last week.
It was, so there's three,
Three sites.
it's Current Center, Simon's Way,
Oakland Road.
Oakland Road, that's the one I
Yeah,
keep forgetting about,
that was the
yeah.
one that they said the seniors at the, whatever the last meeting was, didn't favor it, so it'd be interesting to see the coming meeting, which I won't be able to be at. If they ask people again, cause it could be a different group of people.
For some reason, I thought the senior center had some historical thing that you cannot touch it.
They said they could gut the inside and leave the
Yeah,
outside.
I think
open.
there's, so I think that's part of it's maybe a little bit higher degree of difficulty, but you still can do something on the site.
Inside, as long as you.
The proposal is also to add like over the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly, it's parking.
Well, they're
lots.
gonna put in a parking garage too, like a
A
two-story.
double
and
Current
a
park-
floor.
current parking lot, another,
Like,
Out to the
another
right,
floor of parking, then like a gym on top of that.
yeah.
Ooh.
It's hard because it intersects with SWEC, with what SWEC's trying to do for, if they try to make it the combined senior community center, and maybe the community center has to be a separate structure to really make it work, I don't know.
So at Simon's Way, did you see the diagrams yet?
The SWEC ones?
Yeah.
No,
The
the,
senior center,
yeah, it's off to the right of the
Which-
building, you know the road to go down to the
which
gun
leaves
range?
the whole middle
It's to the
open
right
for
of
the other
that.
thing, yeah.
Really?
So,
Across the road from.
Across the, right.
yeah, it's to the right of
On that, like,
Burbank,
the
as you
land
look
that
in the
we bought.
front
It
of
was
Burbank.
land though that they couldn't put, Edge didn't wanna put a building on that land, they only wanted the area
Yeah.
behind the rink, so it was interesting if they could make use of that land.
New parking lot across the street from the existing parking lot.
Yeah, to the right, it's interesting though, it sort of frees up, it's a non-issue, the whole backside.
Yeah, interesting.
It's a little out of point, but have they thought about the RMLD building? When you go to RMLD, there is like looks like an old vacant building.
Yep.
I don't know if there's.
I know I asked somebody and they said it was not sufficient, but I could be wrong, it wasn't
It's
big
got a
enough.
parking lot in front of it. Looks.
This is a really interesting conversation. My brain is spinning about how we can frame it as future agenda items so that we can keep talking about it.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I said it's out of.
But it's totally not.
Exactly.
I gave a disclosure. I said it's out of.
This may not work, but yeah.
I'd like to know that you know that I'm out of order and.
Well, saying recalc, you know, we should, it may not, maybe way in the future, maybe after town meeting, that much in the future, right?
Well, I think it's gonna come quick, is sort of my point, is,
Looks like it, yeah.
you know,
It's moving fast.
Yeah.
I mean, not April town meeting.
not April, but it
It's not
probably,
that fast.
I don't think it will have time for the fall either, but I think it could, but definitely next spring, I would say.
How does that compare with the Killam timeline?
Right on.
Mr.
I think it'll happen quicker than Killam, cause it's not gonna have
I
any
think,
funds from the state.
I think that's similar timing, it's not, I think we're a year out,
Okay, so April,
April of
so
twenty.
it's possible that town meeting in April 25 is looking at both of these things.
But the Killam timeline I saw, you would know this, didn't they say June 2025 is a vote? for the
Yeah,
next
so I mean, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's that,
Right, okay.
it
so
may
they-
not, it
they-
may
right,
not
they
make
would
it for
target-
April, but it's, you know,
It
that's
seems
the,
silly to
Well,
have
yeah,
two
April
separate
the-
votes close to each other for two separate debt exclusions.
And
Yeah, no,
we'll make
April,
people,
June is the magic period of time after an April town meeting.
yeah,
So-
yeah, that's the window, yeah, and I think they were, you know, actually, if you haven't seen it, one of the things I was meant to say in the thing, they're developing like kind of websites and stuff around Killam, but they have this really unbelievable calendar of all like meetings and like, you know, kind of community piece of it. It's fascinating and it's very, you know, in depth as far as what's out there. So I'll it's probably good to circulate that around at some point too. But yeah, so but that it hits to that date.
Is there any guesstimate of Killam, like what it would look like based on?
No, there, yeah, so
That's
I think
building.
it's just completely exploratory right now as far as, but they're in such information gathering, you know, talking with teachers, also getting folks out to other schools as well. So like just like an amazing process in order to kind of go from here, you know, town to like, this is what it should look like. And it's like, as someone that has, you know, no expertise in this at all, it's been really fascinating to hear how they're even looking at this, like having the space be, you know, flexible, you know, so that it can, you know, you could, you know, kind of be multi-use in, you know, even in a, you know, even in a school setting, so it can be, it can kind of evolve, and if you need to kind of break out spaces and, kind of things of that nature. And I think there's also, kind of a kind of a component to this, is there something that you can look that's outside, that you like, to some of the community, can you use this building for other uses? Especially during the summer, things of that nature. So, which kind of hits to, some of the other community, kind of activities and things of that nature. And do you look at this for some component of a senior center? Not a senior center, but just space that you can be able to use. So, pickleball courts, exactly. You never know.
It's gonna happen.
Someone's gonna, whoever does it's gonna be, kind of in prime position. Cool, all right, if we don't have anything else, I'll entertain a motion.
Say they're all
Did you
up
see
like-
it?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
I missed it.
I know, you guys too busy chatting.
They screwed around.
All right, all those in favor? No, we're not doing one at a time. Awesome, we are adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.